or a way to make a living. Crypto is on the rise, making that dough in the crypto paradise. Watching it go, buying low, selling high. Riding the wave, I'm here to stay. Living in the digital age. No banks, no fees, just decentralized. It's crypto paradise. Ooh. No banks, no fees.
Alrighty, let's kick this thing off. Surfers, happy Monday. It is November 24th. We got a great show for everybody today. My name is Crypto Amaru, Crypto Him in the house. Of course, as always, big story around JP Morgan, whether they may be shorting Bitcoin and causing a lot of the FUD that you've been seeing in the markets. Happy to see some signs of life in the chart this weekend. So I'm sure we'll take a look at that. Was 80,000 the bottom? Sort of felt like it might be. So fingers crossed it was. Fingers crossed it certainly was. Looks like we're climbing back up out of that hole. What else is going on? First of all, how was your weekend there, Nick? What'd you get up to? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Oh, you're muted. Maybe that's why. Oh, we got some technical difficulties coming from Hitman's side. I can see you. I can see you. You can't see me. Why don't we do this? Let's kick off with the JP Morgan story, because I think that's, I mean, for me, that's the biggest thing. Last week, we sort of covered that little bit of FUD we were seeing in the markets around this MSCI potential like delisting of MicroStrategy, which would then lead to forced selling of those stocks, which could then obviously have an adverse effect on Bitcoin. Funnily enough, that's actually an old story that was dredged up. The MSCI sort of question as to whether they would delist strategy, that came out, I believe, on October 10th, right around the time of the Terra FUD. So those things probably connected as well, and obviously connected to the crash that day. Now it's coming out that JP Morgan may be behind this FUD, and that they may be short MicroStrategy. They may be shorting MicroStrategy. Now, I don't know if that's been verified. I'm seeing, obviously, rumors of it. By the way, Nick, can you hear me now? Okay, good news.
Yep.
But I wouldn't be surprised. So let's dig into this a little bit more on today's show. Maybe, Nick, you can share some of the tweets and stuff that have gone out. Max Kaiser, I think, is the leading public figure behind this story of the JP Morgan short of MicroStrategy or strategy. But it would make a lot of sense to me that all this stuff is connected. It's all interrelated. The MSCI thing, which was kind of old news, and then all of a sudden dredged up. Now you're seeing a lot of stories around the quantum computing and the threat to Bitcoin. That's been like an ongoing kind of like non-story for years, really. All of a sudden you're seeing that being talked about on social. So is JP Morgan behind all this? Are they trying to crash the price of MicroStrategy, maybe to clear the way so they can enter this in a more or less manner, or maybe just frankly just kill it?
Yeah, I mean, this is all unconfirmed stuff, but we do know that some more people got unbanked by JP Morgan over the weekend, and we do have Kaiser here, who's been in the space a long time. He's a very interesting character, very loud, but he's not really a liar. But he has unconfirmed information that JP Morgan appears to have existentially threatening short MSTR position that can potentially bankrupt JP Morgan if MicroStrategy trades 50% higher above Friday's close. Now, to say that it's going to bankrupt JP Morgan, that seems very unreasonable. I mean, they spend billions per year in salary for quants, and I'm sure they have protocols to protect themselves, and a 50% rally in one standalone stock shouldn't be enough to bankrupt JP Morgan. But shorting MSTR does make sense. We do know that Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan have been anti-Bitcoin, pro-blockchain for a very long time, since Bitcoin was like $400, guys. He's been anti-Bitcoin. So This isn't anything new in 2016, 2017 cycle, and even in last cycle, JP Morgan, which is Chase and all these other conglomerates of credit cards, have unbanked individuals, shut off credit cards, shut off bank accounts. So this isn't new either. But it is ironic timing for all this to come up when the FUD has seemingly been at all-time highs, and JP Morgan is there to make money off of that. Remember, we always say, listen to what they do, not what they say, and this would line up perfectly with, why did we sell off? The news is so good. What is going on? Why is Bitcoin selling off? Blame the liquidity crisis. And it's really just JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the country, spending a lot of fun to FUD the market, meanwhile making money on the back end by shorting Bitcoin, shorting crypto-related stocks and DAT companies. So I don't like it. Obviously, I don't like Jamie Dimon. I don't like JP Morgan. I never have. But a lot of this is lining up, and there's more and more information coming out by the day over the weekend that this is a reality.
What you do love to see is the industry fighting back, though. You're seeing, obviously, a coordinated effort amongst Bitcoin maxis to, first of all, pump the price of MSTR, but also to sort of get people to stop banking with JP Morgan. So that's going around. Love to see that. Saw that Jack Mallers was unbanked by JP Morgan recently. I know Trump's family had been unbanked by JP Morgan. So part of me thinks that this story goes deeper than just, they want to make money on a short. There's plenty of stocks they can short. Why are they targeting Bitcoin? Why are they targeting the lead company around Bitcoin right now, which is MicroStrategy? So, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy in most cases, but there's a lot of smoke here, and where there's smoke, there's fire, folks. So
remember, JP Morgan essentially is a bank thriving off the current financial system, and blockchain technology is going to mix all that up. Bitcoin is mixing that up, trying to be a global reserve currency over that of the U.S. dollars. So that affects their bottom line, and if they're not positioned to take advantage of that, they could be left behind and be obsolete. Obviously, they've given themselves plenty of time to try to catch up here, but yeah, this is the direction that they're going, because essentially if they FUD all this other stuff, and they've always said they like blockchain technology, they can create JP Morgan network and have JP Morgan stablecoin, and they'll be the forefront leaders, and the traditional finance just funnels onto this new technology, and they're not left behind. So that's what they could be pushing for. Obviously, they have all the quants, they got all the money, they got all the news and recognition to keep pushing in that direction, and I think they've already announced, when the stablecoin bill was being talked about more, that JP Morgan was looking at creating their own stablecoin, and they would do that to collect all the fees. They don't want you to use Tether or USDC. They want JP USD because they make all the money on that, and they have all the control over that.
Well, they already have their JPM coin, which is like it's a stable coin for sort of interbank transactions. I don't think it's a retail-facing product. But, they're sort of the vanguards of the old system. Bitcoin, blockchain, stable coins, that's the new technology that would be disrupting their way of doing business. So I guess it makes perfect sense they would be trying to FUD and crush the crypto industry. It ain't going to work, though. It's not going to work. What I would love to see is a real true GameStop 2.0 moment where all the retail sort of, piles into this trade and pushes the price higher and crushes JP Morgan short, and then maybe they make a movie about it in a couple of years. Do you foresee a roaring kitty stepping in here, or some of these big influencers in the traditional stock market to help push that story?
Potentially, but I don't think MicroStrategy has as much memeability as GameStop. It doesn't have as much nostalgia as GameStop. It also has a much larger market cap than GameStop, so it takes a lot more economic energy to push it up. And then with it being so much Bitcoin tied, Bitcoin going up $10,000 or $20,000 is going to have much more impact on that price than a bunch of retail investors piling into the trade. Now, if you can get both things to happen at the same time, or you get some Bitcoin wheels, Jack Mallers to get on board with it and start pushing it, I think that is more powerful than just some random KOLs or roaring kitty, because they actually own Bitcoin and they can actually make a call to that sector of individuals to kind of pump into the MicroStrategy trade. And MicroStrategy, we're preferring BMNR, SBT over and Coinbase over MicroStrategy. But MicroStrategy is to the point now where I think it's at a negative MNAV. It's got the largest Bitcoin holdings in existence. It's got other financial products that are supporting MSTR, and it's got the Chad Michael Saylor, who's still finding ways to buy more. So it's not something that you want to bet against, and you're probably at a level that makes a lot of sense, unless you think the $80,000 low we saw in Bitcoin isn't actually the low.
Yeah, I'd love to see a sort of coordinated effort. The Bitcoin whales the Bitcoin OGs, Jack Mallers, the world, they are pushing the Bitcoin, and Roy and Kitty comes in, he's pushing MSTR, and you attack it from both angles. We'll see how this story plays out. The one thing that I'm at least a little bit concerned about is this MSCI decision, which I believe is slated for mid-January, and whether they'll determine that MicroStrategy doesn't belong on the indices anymore, and that would be a problem. So. My understanding from insiders that I've been following is that there may be enough money and interest on the side of keeping them in the indices that it won't end up happening. But then, of course, if you have JP Morgan on the other side of it pushing for them to get delisted, it's a bit of a concern. But obviously, look, Bitcoin's going to survive, MicroStrategy is going to survive. It's not an existential thing. It would just be a roadblock and a bump in the road here towards higher prices. So we'll continue to monitor.
Just need to get JP Morgan to force unwind that trade by Bitcoin price go up, MicroStrategy price go up. If they unwind the short, they're not going to be nearly as incentivized to make that a reality. So it's in your hands, guys. Make Bitcoin pump, MicroStrategy pump. JP Morgan will have to unwind the short, and then they're not going to be there trying to get MSCI to make that vote because they won't benefit off of it anymore. So,
there you go. Another reason to pump Bitcoin, folks.
But what's crazy here is, the average Joe, our biggest fear in crypto for years has been like, oh my gosh, the gray line of insider trading and information in crypto. Is it legal? Are we all going to jail? Oh my gosh, don't launch your project. Insider trading. And then now we have Congress making a fortune off of clear insider trading, and they're the ones who get to vote on the laws. And then you see this. JP Morgan dumped 25% of their MSTR position right before the MSCI announced Bitcoin companies can't enter major indices. Like, how would they know that? That's insider trading. If it's not even public information and you're selling assets based off of this information, based off the news headline that's going to come out 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours later, and that's perfectly fine. Let me tell you a little story. When I worked for an institutional finance, it was like the first year I got hired there. So I was playing with very little money. I got like $400 per paycheck in my 401k, and they made you invest it on your own because you're working for a financial firm. So they want you to learn how to invest it. And Peabody here, a coal company, went bankrupt. So the shares went from whatever, $15 a share to like virtually zero. I threw in like $400. The thing did like a 6x after it had some bankruptcy claims going on. And I got called in by HR asking, did you have insider information? They got called from above. I got to answer all these questions. I had to fill out a survey, fill out a form for a $400 investment on a bankrupt company that I was just swinging at as somebody making like $45,000 a year. But this is allowed. But I get called into HR for $400 trade. But this is allowed. But Congress people can be worth millions and millions and millions of dollars even though they only make $200,000 a year. That is the corruption within the system. That is the corruption that's going on. And that's part of why we're all in Bitcoin to begin with. And this kind of stuff is astonishing to me. Like, how do people not face repercussions in jail times when they're selling tens of millions of dollars of assets before public information is released? But lowly old Nick or Bob or Joe makes a trade and gets questioned about insider trading because you made a quick 5x on a bankrupt stock.
Well, you'd hope there would be investigations around this if it's true. But there's so much insider trading that happens on Wall Street. I mean, it's sort of like, trying to plug a dam with a twig or something. So I'm pretty cynical when it comes to these things, as I guess Nick is as well. So we'll see where it all goes. How are the charts looking this morning? Because it feels like we had a little bit of bounce over the weekend here.
Yeah, we see this massive runoff. We had the multiple bullish divergences up here at the highs that were creating rallies, and we sold into this rally. We had a bullish divergence here that got us to 116, but then we had this massive sell-off. We have bought 33% of our position at 92.4. I think that was like on Friday. And we bought another 33% of our position either Saturday or Sunday at the lows at, not the exact lows, but 82,400, I believe. So we still have another 33% position we could buy in Bitcoin. We are seeing a nice relief rally. You do not want to go below like this 83.7, 84,000. You do not want these gains to give up because these are going to get the bears back in, get people to start shorting, and we might go to another new low. But this is kind of the sell-off that would be 5 waves completed down to the downside. This could have been a major low if stocks can hold their grounds. And now we know that these lows were kind of potentially manipulated or fudded, and that's what kind of caused the cascading effect. So as long as we can hold above like 83.7, 84,000, I think we can continue to grind higher back into the 90s, and then we'll have to make a decision around the 95,000 level whether or not this is something that's going to continue to the upside or whether we're going to have more chop and you might want to take some profits and as it retests back to the 90K level. So that's what's going on with Bitcoin. Ethereum up 1% today. Similar story, except we have not traded this as much. Our last sell on Ethereum is all the way up here above $4,000. It got rejected and just started falling through the ice. We had a bullish divergence that we've been showing that just kept extending. We did buy it at 2741, 2700 roughly, and we're at 2830. Again, you don't want to see this thing go below the 2750 level, right around where we bought it, because I'd be giving up over 50% of the gains off this bounce, and that's where people are going to flip bearish once again. So very tight margins, very tight numbers here to try to consolidate and work our way higher. But so far, so good, and it is coming off of major oversold levels, which does give you plenty of room to the upside before things get too frothy again.
I think the longer we hold at these levels, sort of consolidating around 2,800 to $3,000 or something for ETH, and the 85 or 83 whatever for Bitcoin. The longer we stay there, I think we're going to end up bouncing higher here, because that should give people confidence. Hey, this isn't a crypto winter situation. We're not dumping another 20-30%. Your halving cycle theory is officially kaput, and we're looking forward to the Fed rate cut and the QT, etc. In early December, and the market should start running higher. So consolidation is your friend, I think, at these levels. I don't know what would cause another massive crash of 20-30%. But of course, if that happens, then you're looking at the 4-year cycle being a thing still, I guess. And 125K was the top. And that guy, the random guy on Reddit or whatever it was, calling the exact top. Well, he was right on October 6th. Good for him. But I don't think that's how it's going to play out. Consolidation is your friend here. Let's let the market chill a little bit, and the longer we can stay above, not crash down to the downside here, I think we're going to bounce it higher as we get some catalysts unfolding.
Yeah, and if you remember, we've been talking about NASDAQ and following it. Big rally today, but look where it rallied off of, and why we think that the 80K low in Bitcoin was a big number, same with Ethereum, is because you actually saw some capitulation on the NASDAQ, and look where it capitulated to, 23,874. If you remember, right up here, during live shows, I said, hey, downside risk for an ABC correction would be right around 24,000, where you find support. Well, what do you know? You hit the 24,000 level on a capitulation wick down to 23.9, and you're bouncing off that level now. So you want to see these levels kind of hold and see if the trend can be your friend and head higher for NASDAQ leading into QT ending December 1st, potential rate cuts December 10th, and more news and regulation coming out of the government by the end of the year, potentially, Trump naming the next predecessor of Powell, et cetera, and see if that can make the stock market continue to get more frothy, and if that can help Bitcoin and Ethereum catch a bid. Again, you're not out of the woods yet, because that is just the first moving average, 200 MA. The stocks do like 300 MAs a lot as well. That's still down here at 23,000, but it is quickly rising higher, which could serve as support back where we wicked on Friday. So that is another indicator of why Bitcoin 80,000 could have been major low. You had FUD going on. You potentially had shorting from JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks, and you had a capitulation sell-off in the NASDAQ, which is what Bitcoin is most closely correlated to in the traditional markets, right back to previous support. So all those things are lining up. We're following it. It's nice to see NASDAQ up 1.74% today. I wish Bitcoin and Ethereum could follow, because the weekend, Bitcoin and Ethereum were running, and now we get big green out of the stocks, and Bitcoin and Ethereum want to slow down. So come on, guys. Where is the correlation at with the NASDAQ? It hasn't happened in quite a while. You can see this V-shaped recovery that NASDAQ has had, and Bitcoin and Ethereum really flounder in comparison to this indice.
Interestingly, November 24th is apparently one of the most, let's just say, one of the most successful days in the markets, in the traditional markets, going back in history. Like the average return on November 24th is like 0.5% on the S&P 500, which is quite large for S&P. So we'll see if history holds and sort of flows down into crypto and Bitcoin. It's interesting because the markets are correlated, but it seems like only when things are crashing.
Right. We haven't had the positive correlation with NASDAQ in quite a while. Remember, after the COVID crash, there was a lot of positive correlation with Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. Every time NASDAQ was rallying, Bitcoin and Ethereum were following. Risk on assets, people were putting the pieces together. But as of late, M2 money supply not helping Bitcoin. Gold going on a parabolic run, not helping Bitcoin. NASDAQ, V-shaped recovery, barely helping Bitcoin. These are all just things that are pointing to, it doesn't feel like a 4-year cycle. If Bitcoin was ripping and roaring with those and had a parabolic move, and some ETHs had parabolic moves, I could say, hey, maybe we just have less altcoin season because There's so many more alts, but at least we had parabolas on the large caps, and that could have been a 4-year cycle. We just haven't had those parabolas while you're seeing assets with much larger market capitalizations starting to have that parabolic effect. That's why the 4-year cycle for crypto just doesn't make sense to me right now with everything that's coming from QE, but also just we have not had a parabolic move on any of the assets, not even Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, if you buy into this conspiracy theory that JP Morgan's suppressing the price, then perhaps it makes perfect sense to see Bitcoin decoupling from stocks and, price being pushed down to 80,000. Yeah, to the fact that something happened, something broke on October 10th. I guess, depegging of a stable coin and internal sort of price oracle issues within Binance, cascading liquidation event, 20 billion liquidated. All these things sort of adding up to, Bitcoin probably, $20,000, $30,000 less than it probably otherwise would be, then maybe it all makes sense. These forces come together, whether it was coincidental or not, and, we have Bitcoin sitting around $80,000, $85,000. I think we're going to look back 3-6 months from now and go, wow, that was clearly manipulated. The powers that be were looking to buy in lower. They were able to do that, and now we're, smashing up back above all-time highs, and the 4-year cycle is officially dead. That's my prediction as to what's going to happen in the next few months. Let's see if it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, this gold chart's looking a lot like this market cycle chart that everybody always looks at, the psychology of the market cycle. You saw the parabolic run-up, the massive double top up here. We had the rotation video calling the exact top of gold. That was, at the time, the exact low of Bitcoin as well upon this drop of gold. And, this looks like a complacency rally to me. Now, do I think Bitcoin or gold's going to do all this and panic off and go all the way back down to $2,000? I don't think so. But I still am on the side of this selling out of gold up here was the play. And we'll see if that plays out over the next couple months, if Bitcoin will continue to outperform gold moving forward here for the remainder of this year, Q1, Q2, and potentially even Q3 of 2026, if we're truly in a 5-year business cycle, which could create a 5-year Bitcoin and crypto cycle.
So far, those selling gold haven't rotated into Bitcoin, or at least not enough people. But these are long-term trends. Let's see how it all plays out. I want to give a shout out to some of the folks here this morning watching with us. Thank you, Todd. Reminding folks to smash the like and subscribe button. Good morning to Martin. Good morning to Jay. Interesting comment here from our friend Martin. We'll always be at a disadvantage because we don't get Bitcoin. We get alts. And for alts going up, we need BTC to go up first. I mean, I agree that in all likelihood, alts will not be pumping up until Bitcoin meaningfully recovers. But to say we don't get I'm a big advocate for holding Bitcoin. I think
you got a hiss going on in your microphone.
Oh, yeah, that's
water
my
runner. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'll shut up and mute myself in a sec. But you should have Bitcoin and some alts. You shouldn't just have alts. That's my position anyway. Not financial advice.
Well, yeah, we showed you the trades that are occurring on Bitcoin. We're now 66% long, so you should have some kind of trading bag or hodl bag of Bitcoin for sure. Although I do believe that Ethereum is the play for large caps. I think Ethereum will continue to outperform Bitcoin. We have look at the green dot here. This is where I was saying, hey, this is where I think Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin. If you want to sell all your Bitcoin for Ethereum, I wouldn't hate you for it. And look what's happened so far. Outperformed Bitcoin by 84% since May 4th, on top of outperforming the US dollar as well. Remember, Bitcoin from May 4th to here is up, and Ethereum's outperformed that gain by 85%. It looks like it's basing again at previous support levels here, and I want it to continue higher and get up towards this green line. This here is how, if Bitcoin goes to 244,000, Ethereum's 22,000. Well, Nick, I don't think Bitcoin's going to 244. Okay, what if Bitcoin goes to 150? Well, then you have $15,000 ETH. Bitcoin goes to 180. Well, then you got $18,000 ETH. Doesn't matter. Whatever number you think Bitcoin's going to do, this is where I think Ethereum versus the Bitcoin chart trends. And when that happens, you're looking at somewhere between like an 8-to-1 ratio, 10-to-1 ratio of ETH to Bitcoin. And that's how you get the big numbers on Ethereum. That's how we get an alt season. Not Bitcoin's performance, but Ethereum's performance is going to dictate the trenches, retail demand, retail hype, and even institutional FOMO, because the Ethereum DATs at that point, BMNR, Sharply Gaming, and others will be absolutely mooning. You also have the BlackRock spot ETF for Ethereum that will be paying dividend yield in Ethereum itself. So if Ethereum price is going up, that dividend yield APR is going to explode as well. So this is the trend as your friend. We've been right so far. Picked the exact low. It's had this slow meandering down lower as everything is selling off. But I think we're coming into major support once again. And I would love for Ethereum. Of course, Bitcoin needs to go up. I would love for it to go up. But Bitcoin doesn't need to go up to massive numbers for alts to run. If Bitcoin finds a footing, gets back to 110, 120, even miraculously gets to 127,000 and new all-time highs, if Ethereum is outperforming that, that's when altcoins come to life. That's when we see an explosion, and that's where you see your portfolios will be growing much, much faster than holding Bitcoin itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think all very possible. Bitcoin to 150, ETH above 10K. I'm not ready to say 15,000 is guaranteed. But I think we need to be well into the rate cutting cycle. We need to be well into quantitative easing by the Fed. We need to be just on a risk on environment for crypto and for tech stocks and all things quote risk assets. Up until then, I don't see how where's the liquidity coming from, where's the capital coming from up until that point. But the good news is, it seems like the rate cut we've been predicting on December 1st, it seems like a lot of the Fed has swung now back in the direction, and the betting markets, by the way, too, swung back in the direction of saying, okay, December 10th rate cuts are going to be a thing. We know QT's ending on December 1st. We know Powell's being replaced by mid 26, and his that announcement's going to be made probably before the end of the year here as to who's the next Fed governor going to be, or commissioner, excuse me. So yeah, number of different things can play in our favor here, but I wouldn't hold your breath for 15K ETH. I think that's sometime mid 26.
Well, yeah, that'd be this cycle. That's this cycle, so that would be great. Martin Max King says, what if ETH will outperform Bitcoin and PLS outperforms ETH and Surf outperforms PLS? I mean, that's exactly what we've been saying, and we did have that for about a month or two. There was a month or two there where Ethereum was going back into the $4,000, outperforming Bitcoin on this run-up, as you can see on this chart. This isn't just saying it. This is what the chart is saying here. ETH versus Bitcoin outperforming. PLS was outperforming ETH to the upside. That's when we broke out with that inverse head and shoulders that we were showing you. And Surf went from $10,000 to $3.6 million. Now, since then, the market has kind of fallen apart. Ethereum back down from those $4,500 level to as low as, $2,500. Starting to underperform Bitcoin. PLS has sold off dramatically, near all-time lows once again. And Surf has gone from 10,000 to 3.6 million, back to 150,000, and now we're sitting around 200 or 250,000. So we've only had that for about a month or two when that happened, but that is the trend that we believe will happen if the market cycle continues to play out. Remember, we talked about why is all the money, the Pulse Chain Sacrifice Ethereum getting Tornado Cash? Well, it was getting Tornado Cash when it was up, 4,000, 4,200. Preparing for if Ethereum broke out, if the alt season started playing out, that Ethereum could have been and would have been sold and pumped into Pulse Chain, and that would have played out. Unfortunately, it sold off. Richard Hart has said many times he doesn't like selling things cheaper than he bought it, and Pulse Chain Sacrifice Wallet bought all that Ethereum for $3,800. So I don't expect anything meaningful to happen, at least from non-organic pumping on Pulse Chain, until Ethereum is above 3,800. And I've been on the record saying he's looking for 5,000 and higher to really feel like he got massive gains and can start that rotation. But we did have that exact outperformance you were talking about, but only for about a month and a half. And it was glorious, and we were right. But then the entire market's cycle slowed down. We saw the liquidation crisis, which is dragging everything.
Yeah, I mean, Pulse Chain has the opportunity to outperform at some point during the peak of the bull run, or as Ethereum's running like mad, and then Pulse Chain can do well, Surf can do well. But don't capitulate now, guys. I mean, seeing that across Pulse Chain, it seems like people are very salty, just angry and pissed and selling and blaming Richard Hart and all that. And perhaps Richard Hart has something to do with the problems plaguing Pulse Chain. But I think it's mostly just market. It's mostly just everyone's risk off. All alts are basically in the gutter. Ethereum's crashed. I mean, Bitcoin's crashed. I mean, what are people expecting, right? And so then they're lashing out and trying to find someone to blame when it's really just overall market conditions and risk-off attitude and, end of the quantitative tightening cycle and, everything's being squeezed. So, you obviously have a choice, buy, hold, or sell. I'm sticking with Pulse Chain through thick and thin. It's not the majority of my portfolio. It's a smaller portion of my portfolio. It's, higher risk, higher returns, sort of that category of my portfolio. That's Pulse Chain. And so, look, I'm staying positive about it. I know it sucks, and you can be mad about Richard Hart for this, that, and the other, but I think it's just mostly the market, guys, and you got to wait through these difficult times to get to the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing that we always say. If Ethereum was at $5,000 or Bitcoin was at 110 even, and ADA was near all-time highs, then I could agree with you and be like, oh, okay, we're in the wrong asset. Let's rotate out. But that isn't the case. Here's Cardano, last high, $3.10. It's currently at 41 cents. So with you saying the cycle's over, Cardano went from 312 down to 41. One of the largest assets out there. So you can't scream and bemoan Richard Hart when this is the altcoin market. This is what's going on in the altcoin market. And we just found out that somebody actually found an attack vector of Cardano, and the chain split. That's why the price is selling off harder than the rest. So, there's a lot of things going on. And again, until we see Ethereum above 5,000, Bitcoin new highs, and maybe, BNB had its run, but that's really about it. Then you can start to be like, look around and be like, all right, well, my alt's not doing nothing. I think it's dead. I need to rotate into better networks who are going to perform for the next 1, 3, 6 months from now, and I need to move on. But right now, the altcoin market is all shit. So don't think you're the only ones here on Pulse Chain not doing well, or this alt is down, or that alt is down, or this pre-sale hasn't launched yet, whatever. When you have the top assets in the entire market still down 2, 3, 400% from their previous all-time highs in 2021, Ethereum 5 years later still no new all-time high. Literally the only assets that have gone to new all-time highs is BNB and Bitcoin. Nothing else has. So hold your horse, see what's going on. Obviously some new coin launches, whether it's meme coins or some pre-sales we're in, or Surf token, they created new all-time highs because they launched this cycle and they caught some timing and some hype and some FOMO and some passive yield. But other than that, like anything that's from last cycle, nothing's gone to new all-time highs, guys. Like 10 assets in the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, it's been brutal. 2 years of absence of alt season is weighing on everybody and the prices, obviously. But one strategy that will probably work for folks is sort of looking across what's outperformed, what's done well this cycle, even though there has been alt season. But what's done pretty well? Obviously, you talked about BNB. Solana, Ethereum, maybe Hype, a handful of other these big caps. Not Cardano. Stay away from Cardano. That's vaporware. But there's a handful of decent big caps. Those will probably, when the market finally does turn around, those will likely start pumping first. You can make some money on those big caps or mid caps, and then start getting more risk on as the cycle evolves from there. But right now it's just risk off. Everyone's scared. Fear is still at sub 10. I think last I saw, I don't think that's changed. So, if anyone's curious, well, why is alts, why are my alts in the shitter? This is just the phase of the market. End of the Fed's quantitative tightening cycle. They've squeezed the markets, and they've squeezed the economy to try to wring out the inflation that they're so concerned about. And this is what you see at the end of it. Capitulation, anger, asset prices down, the economy struggling, jobs struggling. This is what the Fed engineered, and so they're shortly gonna have no choice but to reverse course and buoy the market and the economy, because I think they've squeezed and they've been tight for way too long.
And the poly market odds are now up to 70% that there will be a cut in December. Remember last week it was down as low as 44%, and we said we don't agree with that. I don't mind it because that means the market's not pricing it in. And if they don't cut, there won't be as steep of a sell-off, but we believe that a cut is coming. And then it went to 60%, and then 65%. I saw it as high as 70% chance of a cut in December. So it seems that people on Polymarket are starting to wake up to our side of the aisle as well. We should have been betting on Polymarket when it was 44%, because we'd be in profits right now, looking to maybe take some gains on that trade. But we'll see what happens. I still believe that QT will, in fact, end on December 1st, and I still believe that on December 10th it all but makes sense that we need another interest rate cut, and the Fed has already hinted that they want multiple more cuts during Q1 of 2026. And what's nice is if they do all those cuts and then Powell's removed, whether it's going to be a Fugazi pump or not, the new Fed chair wants to cut rates in a big way and is very pro-Bitcoin. So that's where I think you can get the parabolic blow-off in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and altcoins for the cryptocurrency ecosystem.
Yeah, a few things happened over the past week to sort of shift the market in favor of the rate cut, or the betting odds, I should say. A few of the Fed governors came out and basically said, well, in light of the the new job data, maybe it makes sense to cut. So they're becoming more dovish, and the data's coming out to support that. Unemployment ticked up to 4.4%. They don't want to get higher than 4.5. Inflation is not nearly as bad. I know it's above 2, but it's kind of been like trending down and around high 2s right now, so that's not as much of a concern. And then you have guys like Christopher Waller just going out there. He just, even this morning, stated he's advocating for a bigger cut, maybe a 50 basis point. So, there's enough, I think, information out there to indicate they are going to end up cutting it this December 10th. But I don't think it's priced in, to your point. I don't think it's priced in because you still have a lot of skeptics in the market that are just skittish and risk off and looking for excuses to sell.
Yeah, so those of you who look at the charts and are like, well, I didn't get the buys on Bitcoin and ETH, Nick. What else? What alpha can you give me? Here's one that we're looking at. We sold Coinbase at $370 per share, taking profits once again. If you look at this, we have never once made a trade on Coinbase that wasn't profitable. Never once since 2023. So you can follow this or not follow this. That's up to you. But the odds say that we'll make money again, and we're going to be buying cheaper. We are watching the buyback here. It's 32.11% cheaper than our previous sell up here. And we are now hitting oversold on the RSI, oversold on the technometer. So we haven't pulled the trigger yet. But if you were up here and you sold with us, does it really matter? Not really. Or if you're new to the game, this is still a really steep sell-off. We're going to keep having some patience. We're going to see if Bitcoin and Ethereum digest the rally or if they want to give up some of the gains. Because if they give us some of the gains, I think we could retest this 233 mark and potentially having one more shakeout down here below that 233 to give us a bullish divergence bottom before we can head higher. But Coinbase is on our radar. It's 32% lower than our sell. And we're getting very close to taking another trade on Coin, one of the largest crypto companies in the entire space. And the company who is rubbing elbows with the United States government, rubbing elbows with all the big players such as BlackRock, Fidelity, and getting AUM for the Ethereum spot ETF, Bitcoin spot ETF. They also will massively benefit when retail comes back to the market due to trading fees. And right now they are beat earnings 2 times in a row, 3 of the last 4, with virtually zero retail in the market. This is just all institutional money, AUM, OTC deals, spot ETFs. So what happens with the flywheel when retail comes back? Spot ETFs are surging and getting more volume because why? Ethereum price is higher, Bitcoin price is higher, etc. So for them to be beating earnings and expectations while the market is floundering is a very good sign for the future of Coinbase, and that's why somewhere down here we will be buying Coinbase once again for a trade.
Well, certainly retail is nowhere to be found in this market. We are close to, I think, the all-time lows on Google searches for Bitcoin and crypto, which is kind of that standard proxy for retail interest. And you can see it in the feed, you can see it, across social media. You're just not getting the attention and the views and all that. When crypto's when the price is performing as it is, this is what happens. So you can ask yourself, does it make sense for me to wait for the crowd to be back in here, or should I front run the crowd and take some positions, or certainly at least hold my existing assets in anticipation of the future crowd arriving? You can make that decision for yourself. I choose to hodl. I choose to be ahead of the crowd, and they'll be back. They'll be back when price starts pumping again, no doubt.
Let's circle back to the first topic we had because I just saw a good post from Jason A.I. Williams. Shout out to you, bud. Bitcoin whale. JP Morgan CEO faded Bitcoin because it is money used by criminals for criminal activity, calling it a pet rock back in the day, if you guys don't remember. JP Morgan CEO ignored Jeffrey Epstein's illegal activity, money laundering, human trafficking, extortion, etc., all done with US dollars and other global currencies. Jeffrey Epstein chose JP Morgan. JP Morgan chose Jeffrey Epstein. Read this as many times as you need to get it. So do you want to listen to JP Morgan? Is that who you want to side with when they're telling you Bitcoin is a pet rock, Bitcoin is used by criminals, yet it's proven that US dollars is used by criminals much more than Bitcoin. And literally they had a handshake agreement with Jeffrey Epstein himself. Meanwhile, they are debanking Bitcoiners, Trump family, Maulers, all these individuals who have not found themselves in prison or having a criminal record. So pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, the conspiracy theory all makes sense. It really does. We kind of laid it out in the beginning of the stream. But my hope here is that, the whales, some retail, there are a lot of interests that support this industry and want strategy to do well, want Bitcoin to do well. They all need to come together to fight this shit. Fight the banking cartel, fight Epstein's banker. The whole thing is infuriating, frankly, if you're, a believer in Bitcoin. But I suppose not surprising, right? Because when the likes of a JP Morgan, their business interests get threatened, they'll come at you with everything they got. They'll manufacture FUD, they'll take a short out, they'll dump, they'll manipulate the MSCI decision, right? And they'll be going out on CNBC or whatever, and claiming Bitcoin's a pet rock again. So I guess this is par for the course. What's it? First they laugh at you, then they try to kill you, and then you win, right? Is that so? I guess we're in the they're trying to kill you phase. But Bitcoin's been dead, and they've tried to kill it 1,000 times, and it always comes back. So I'm not worried about it long term, but it does kind of explain all the price performance, doesn't it? Which was sort of I guess in one sense good, because one of the things I think that was pissing people off was like, why is Bitcoin doing so bad? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, looking at these few different macro stories and factors out there, but then you go behind the scenes a little bit and you realize that these some of the wealthiest companies in the world, most powerful people in the world, are trying to kill the assets. Like, oh, okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah, and talking about MicroStrategy, I did see a video of Michael Saylor talking about the MSCI thing. And he said even if MSCI votes that it can't be allowed in MSCI, it doesn't make the ultimate verdict for the NASDAQ or S&P 500. So those things aren't hand in hand, that if MSCI does their vote in January, that now all of a sudden MicroStrategy is going to be delisted from the S&P 500, and that they're claiming $2.8 billion would unwind from MicroStrategy, of which that number would be a lot smaller as well because price is down. So, we kind of just went over the possibilities, and that not because one thing happens that all the things happen, and also the fear-mongering number they're throwing out there that 2.8 billion of MicroStrategy shares will be sold is greatly embellished for a multitude of reasons. Number one, it's not that many shares that add up to 2.8 billion, but also since price performance is at 171 a share, it's a lot smaller number. He was saying their math was something with shares at 375 a share, which is 2x what it is currently, 3x what it is currently. So again, that just points to the over embellishment, the FUD, and the trying to get you to panic out. Now, this is a massive sell-off for MicroStrategy. We are not in a position, so it doesn't matter to me all that much, but this does affect the overall perspective of the Bitcoin market. And we want MicroStrategy to do well because they own a ton of Bitcoin. We want them buying more Bitcoin. As we can see here, oversold on the RSI, coming back into this consolidation range. But the technometer is not really giving us a buy. The last time technometer really gave you a buy was back here when the first of the sell-off really started accelerating. That's because volume came into the downside. But I will say you could see this is an Adam and Eve formation, which means this would be your neckline. So you would measure here, shift, drag it to here. And this could be your downside risk. If you put it right where the neckline is, right about there, downside risk to around $132 to $135, which would happen to be right back to where this consolidation range was. So there is confluence with downside risk to 135. But again, at some point, if Bitcoin does well, this is going to V-shape recovery. If some of this FUD gets determined that it's FUD, and some of these big whales do not side on the side of JP Morgan and actually side with Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, you're going to see a V-shape recovery. So if you're looking for a trade on MicroStrategy, somewhere between here and 135, I think is a very good buy setup if you believe that the Bitcoin cycle is not over and you believe that a lot of this is short selling and FUD and manipulation driving this price lower. So,
well, I think that's been established at this point, right? I mean, assuming you buy into the story about JP Morgan, which to me seems perfectly logical and makes a lot of sense, you would therefore expect to bounce here at some point. I would love to see the Bitcoiners, OG whales, and whoever's, let's say the Galaxy Digitals of the world. I mean, there's a lot of people, really, really rich people who actually want strategy to do well. They need to rally around this company if it is in fact being attacked and shorted by the bankers, right? Like, this is the time for the Bitcoiners to rally together to support this industry. So let's see how this plays out. I think it's going to end up being a positive story in the end, a happy ending, as it were, but you never know. JP Morgan, pretty powerful, so let's see how it goes. The MSCI thing is very interesting too to me, because it would make no sense for there to be like zero recourse, and if they were just the ultimate decision makers, like, oh, okay, we've changed the rule, you're out, like, that's it. Like, what do you mean? There has to be checks and balances in the system like that. Could MicroStrategy file a lawsuit in advance of any kind of decision to try to litigate that and stay, and pause whatever may have happened otherwise. So we'll be monitoring this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some legal action at some point. But it's not just this MSCI as the final decision maker to like kill an entire asset. Like that's just not how it works.
Yeah, so do what you will with that information. And like I said, V-shaped recovery probably happens on MicroStrategy if Bitcoin follows through, and if this is all term and FUD. Now, does that happen here at 171, or does that happen closer to 135? I don't know. Your guess is as best as mine, but a massive sell-off in MicroStrategy so far. And for the holders of MicroStrategy, I would not be panicking out now if you hold this. Again, we do not have a position here. We've traded Coinbase instead, SBT, Bitminer, and others. But this is obviously a top dog in the industry, and we want them to succeed because the better MicroStrategy price does, the more funding they get to buy more Bitcoin off the open market, which pumps price.
Yeah, everyone should be rooting for a strategy to do well. Even I don't own the stock. Like I much prefer to own the underlying asset, but there's plenty of people out there for a multitude of reasons like the stock, and it's great to have that option. But yeah, everyone should be rooting for them to succeed and bounce back here and kill the bankers, crush the bankers. Like what like this is a great Bitcoin story, isn't it? Right? Like the bankers are trying to kill Bitcoin. It's time to rally around and save Bitcoin, guys. And so that's why you love to see people out there like I'm closing my account at JP Morgan. I'm withdrawing all my money from JP Morgan. Like we need more of that. I don't have a JP Morgan account, never have. Nothing to do with any of this kind of thing. Just never opened one. I have a different bank. But yeah, Nick, if you got an account, close it out. Send him an angry letter.
Well, before the live show, I was saying I wish I would unbank so I don't have to pay that credit card balance anymore because I do have a JP Morgan Chase card. And please unbank me so you can waive the money I owe you and I don't pay you this month. I don't think that's how it works. I was just saying it tongue in cheek. And I really don't want you to cancel my credit card because that means I need to reapply somewhere else. But, it's kind of crazy what's going on out there. And Jack Mallers himself apparently was unbanked, got a letter, and he actually framed the letter and has it in his office now. So I have a feeling that letter is going to be making its rounds on all the news networks, and that's going to be a topic that he's going to be covering in his live appearances on CNBC and everything else in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, it's a great story. I hope that like the mainstream, financial media, Bloomberg, CNBC's, whatever else, pick up the story because it's a great story. Bankers versus Bitcoin. Like this should be front page news. Let's see if that happens. By the way, I'd love to see some proof of the short. I don't know if that's something that we can verify. Not we, but the market. If someone can verify that the short has actually been taken out, it shouldn't be that hard to confirm that. But up until then, it's a little bit speculation. But the whole thing makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at the Bitcoin price performance, like the banks are trying to kill it. The bankers are trying to kill it. Now I understand why Bitcoin dumped to 80K over the past month.
Yeah, and I guess in other market news, if you guys have Pokemon cards, hit me up. My buddy found some in a storage unit, been selling it. He sold it for $1,250. But even common cards like this from the first generation are now worth up between $7 to $10. So if you got some, hit your boy up. Let me sell it for you. Let me make some cash so I can buy the dip. Make you some cash so you can buy the dip. Stuff that people think is bulk and worth pennies is actually worth some Benjamins. So there's your update from the Kabuto King, a basic card now worth $9. Go steal your kids' buying.
The Pokemon market's holding up well, I guess, because there's no manipulation by banks or what?
Some of the modern cards are down, but they were kind of over bloated. But a lot of the vintage market is still holding up pretty well. And I mean, collectibles in general and Pokemon has been outperforming Bitcoin and really following more of the NASDAQ. Like the prices have been going up the past year or so. And the trend probably will continue if we're right about monetary policy. Because the thing is, when QT switches to QE, everybody has cheaper money. Everybody has more money in their pockets, stimulus checks, whatever. We like to dabble in crypto and Bitcoin and more, real financial instruments. But there's a ton of people who like to dabble in sports cards, Pokemon cards, and now they're expanding to other TCGs, whether it's Magic or One Piece or VFriends. So I think that sector continues to catch a bit as well. In COVID crisis, Bitcoin and Pokemon really ran together, and they really topped out at the same level. So again, it's very interesting that Bitcoin has not gone on a parabolic run, and Pokemon and NASDAQ and everything else has really seen a V-shaped recovery in a year of upside.
Yeah, that's what's interesting when you talk about the Pokemon cards or collectibles or really any other asset other than Bitcoin. Like, it's surprising that Pokemon, for example, has done as well as it has in my mind, just because we haven't seen the quantitative easing. We haven't seen money sloshing around the economy like it was during the COVID days. So it's kind of interesting to see that asset class outperforming. I don't know what you attribute that to. Just
now that you talk about it, I think I really attribute it to retail because it has the social dynamic and the retail market participants in those markets. like you probably don't see it on your feed, or maybe people are not in this because you guys don't sell Pokemon or talk about Pokemon. Your phone's not listening to it, whatever. But if you go on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, it's tons of new influencers are literally going to card shows and they're recording the card shows now. So there's this whole social dynamic and retail market of people buying and reselling on camera, and then people watch those videos and they're doing the same thing. So I really think it's the same thing as what happened with altcoins. It's retail money, retail appetite, and social demand and social influence, and that's happening in a big way with collectibles. Now I want you to, after the show, to go on there and see what I'm talking about. Go on TikTok and search it. And there's vendors that have gone from 0 followers to like 1.1 million followers over the course of the past 6 to 8 months due to just posting them buying and reselling Pokemon cards at card shows as a vendor. So pretty crazy stuff going over there. And I think that market is just doing well because, well, they have retail. Crypto doesn't. When you have that social influence, we see what happens. We saw what happened with the social influence of gold, the $30 trillion asset, able to go parabolic and getting people to line up around the corners just because it is on your social feed, and then you feel like you're missing out and you want to do the same thing.
What gives me a lot of hope for Bitcoin and crypto is if you understand how the herd works, how these trends operate. The herd will run to where assets are going up. They don't really necessarily care what assets it is. Pokemon's a great example. How many of the people that are buying and trading Pokemon cards 2 years ago cared about it and were into it and genuinely are like fascinated about exactly, yeah, I mean, so and if you know, you can imagine an alternate universe where Pokemon cards are not doing well, and then you think that those influencers got the 1.1 million and you think everyone's into it and trading in the volume and whatever is high. Like, no, of course not. If the price was down, no one would be there. Same thing with gold. People lined up around the block to buy gold, not because they all of a sudden love gold, but they did it because the price had been going up for like 6 months straight. It was finally like a parabolic move, like I have to get it, feeling FOMO, you know, line up around the block and buy it at the Pico top. The same thing will happen and can happen with crypto and Bitcoin. We've seen it. How many cycles now where retail comes roaring back in when they feel there's money to be made. But when the market's at peak fear and, you know, Bitcoin's down 30%, like, of course they're nowhere to be found because money is not to be made right now, at least in their mind. So, look, it all goes in cycles. Everything has its moment in the sun. And I know it's been a long time coming, but Bitcoin and crypto will have another moment in the sun.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying. So, and again, with who's been involved, the thing is with crypto and everybody, you're gaining more retail adoption. So, like, there's more retail in crypto now than there was in the 2017 or 2021 cycle. The problem is that is not active retail. They're not actively buying more. They're not actively telling their friends about it, not actively telling their family about it because they bought some, whether it's $100 or $1,000, and they're down. So they forgot about it themselves. They're not excited. You need green candles to reactivate old retail, to reactivate new retail, and then for them to expand it and talk about it to other people and get those retail participants to put more money in. So that's what we're waiting for, because there is more people now that know about crypto, have a crypto account, and own crypto than ever before. But when the market is down, nobody is excited to put more money in. People are pulling out to pay for finances, and nobody's excited to evangelize it to others because they fear, being wrong and the thing continuing to trend down and to the right.
It's all going to happen, all in due time. All in due time, my dear surfer friends. So, yeah, look, it's been a very challenging past, let's call it, well, I know it's been a month since Bitcoin. It feels like an eternity, maybe 6 weeks since Bitcoin hit its all-time high. But since alts have basically done nothing, I mean, if the bear market vibes have been around for longer than a month, at least from my standpoint, I don't know, my own sentiment, been feeling pretty bearish for, months now. So it's been tough, guys. It's been very, very tough. But, having been in the industry for as many years as, we collectively have, things always turn around. They always turn around at some point. It doesn't trend down to zero. Bitcoin ain't going to zero. Ethereum's not going to zero. We will eventually see a bounce here and a rally higher. We just haven't had the macro conditions for it. So that's really been impeding us. And then, of course, this JP Morgan conspiracy theory, I think, hurting things too, is they're dumping a bunch of Bitcoin, dumping a bunch of MicroStrategy shares to try to make money on their short and crush the industry. So there's powerful forces at in effect here, guys. You kind of have to just roll with the tides, roll with the punches, understand eventually, as Martin says, times will change.
I mean, we've really covered everything. So keep an eye on Bitcoin and Ethereum here. Let's see if we can start correlating with the Nasdaq. Let's see if the Nasdaq has any follow through on the rally directly off that 24,000 support we were talking about in Friday's live show. Go tune in if you think I'm bullshitting you. It's there. And again, MicroStrategy, V-shape recovery incoming. Is it from 170? Is it from 135? I don't know. We don't own it. But that's just the writing on the wall, in my opinion, based on the indicators and based on statements from Michael Saylor himself. Now, again, he has bag bias, but nothing he said has ever thrown up a red flag or been a lie or turned out to be untrue. So he continues to innovate, launching new products, financial products within the digital ecosystem, blockchain, and Bitcoin. And again, if JP Morgan's truly in a short, that is a ballsy play, because it doesn't rely on a short squeeze. It doesn't rely on retail or even institutional demand. If Bitcoin goes up $10,000 to $20,000, a V-shaped recovery will happen on MicroStrategy just based on their books. And JP Morgan's going to have to unwind that short for a loss. So I hope they're short, because that could be fuel for the fire for MicroStrategy, which means that they will be buying more Bitcoin when the stock does surge higher.
Yeah, I'm looking for confirmation that the story's true. We talk a lot about it. Market's talking about it. It's funny. It's all just sort of based on like a rumor from Max Kaiser, who we know Max Kaiser's a legit guy as far as I can tell. He's not just some random, anonymous person on X or anything like that. But, hasn't been confirmed. But the whole thing makes a lot of sense to me. So let's monitor that story. I hope it's all true, and let's hope that the bankers get crushed.
That's all we got today, I think. A little green, a little red on the market, a mixed basket. Nobody's getting rich today. Have convictions in your positions. If you have some capital to cash, stay tuned for our remaining buys. We do have cash to buy a little more Bitcoin. We do have cash to buy a little more ETH. And again, we sold some assets such as Pengu higher, Coinbase higher, and others. So we are watching those very closely. So keep tuning into here. If you want more insight, get 200,000 surf or more to get in the Dow, to get kind of alpha behind the scenes before the public gets it. And I guess we'll see you on the beach. What do you think about that, Crypto Amaru?
Absolutely. Great stuff today, guys. We'll be back tomorrow to a live stream. And until then, see you guys on the beach.